Okay, I think we're ready to start now. Welcome to today's webinar. My name's Kevin Ross, and I'll be joined shortly by Jerry Durning from Verint. Between us, we want to give you an insight into how policy-based recording can be added to Microsoft Teams, what features can be expected, and how this can be delivered on a cloud-based software as a service basis. You'll get to see Teams recording in action, and feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A panel at any time. You should see a live chat box in the right hand side of your screen, and we have people available ready to answer those questions. We're going to cover quite a lot in the next 30 minutes or so. I'll be talking about the changing environment that we live in now and why those changes that we are seeing require organizations to consider how they can remain compliant while still making use of the great features offered by Microsoft Teams. Jerry will then explain how Verint's Teams recording works and give us a demonstration of the system itself. We'll try and explain some of the deployment options and decisions that need to take place and discuss options for both hybrid or a fully hosted service. I want to start the webinar by sharing some of our credentials in this area and explaining how our two organizations came to be working together. Most of you will already know Verint as a market leader in customer engagement solutions and specifically around compliance and quality recording on a variety of telephony and contact center platforms. Geomant, meanwhile, are a specialist customer interaction systems integrator, and we have our own portfolio of contact center and digital engagement software. And we've been working with Microsoft Unified Communications for over a decade. But in the area of call and interaction recording, we've chosen to partner with Verint, who have consistently provided the most advanced and feature-rich solutions for recording not just calls, but all types of customer interactions for both compliance and quality purposes. Our two companies have worked together since 2012, and Geomant has many customers using Verint solutions in a wide variety of industries. In the area of Teams recording, Verint were one of the few software vendors chosen to partner with Microsoft, and they were able to launch an enterprise Teams recording solution, the one that you'll see today, on the very day that Microsoft's API was made generally available just a few months ago. Meanwhile, Geomont doesn't just resell Verint software. We've got a whole dedicated team of Verint technical experts providing implementation and support services. And we've now launched a cloud-based software as a solution, software as a service solution that allows organizations to use Verint Teams recording service without having to worry about deployment or infrastructure management. So let's look at the environment that we're in now. We've all seen that huge increase in the use of Teams, particularly since the current pandemic completely changed the way organizations and individuals work. This headline number that you see on the slide of 75 million daily active users of Microsoft Teams in April compares with just 13 million in July 2019. That's a 500% increase in just 9 months. But it isn't just a user number increase. There's also a change in the way that people are using Teams and what features they're using. Far more of us are actually turning on the camera these days when we have our Teams calls and Teams meetings. And the use of Teams, the Teams mobile app, has increased significantly. So we have increased user numbers, plus we have more video and we have more screen sharing. And we have far more people working from home and using mobile devices. Which brings us to the question of compliance and quality. How do you ensure that users who are involved with regulated activities are adhering to the rules? And how can you check the quality of the interactions that the people that are using Teams are having? If you can't record Teams interactions in all modalities, then you shouldn't be using Teams for regulated activities or for customer interaction. You can't rely on the inbuilt convenience recording solution included with Microsoft Teams. What we're talking about is a compliance and quality solution where the organization sets the rules about what is recorded and who has subsequent access to those recordings. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Jerry, who's going to give us some more information and demonstrate the system. Jerry, over to you.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay. Okay, so let's start looking at compliance and compliance recording in a bit more detail. As Kevin's already highlighted, unified communications and collaboration tools are changing the way we work, communicate, and exchange information. And as we embrace these new ways of working with UC platforms, organizations must still remain compliant with the regulations, corporate policies, ethical compliance, internal compliance that demand that the organization records, stores, monitors, and evaluates all regulated transactions and interactions. So as the slide says, compliance is everywhere, across every industry, region, country, jurisdiction. In these areas, regulated industries like financial services, utilities, healthcare, insurance, and others have regulations that mandate calls must be recorded, secured, and kept for a defined period. Over and above regulations, there's many other reasons to record conversations across from customers, across the contact center, across back office. So different reasons to record conversations could include consumer protection, corporate liability, disputes, complaints, evidence of transactions, adherence to corporate guidelines, wider customer service coaching, and of course, there are always regulatory reasons to record. So with Geomant, we help customers embrace not only the new UC technologies, but also ensure that the conversations are compliant. And let's start looking at that in a bit more detail. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start going through a flow leading up to a demo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off at high level and give you an overview of the functional flow of how recording, policy-based compliance recording works within Microsoft Teams using our recording solution. And then we'll look at it, a demo, and then we'll look at it in a bit more detail. So at a high level, let's establish the functional flow of how the recording works. So Microsoft released new compliance policy recording features and APIs in May this year. And as part of that release, what they did is they introduced the concept of a regulated user and regulated policy-based recording. So in the flow here, you'll see on the left-hand side, if we start off with the regulated user, so that regulated user, if we assume that Jerry's a regulated user, he'll have been set up within, there's configuration and administration with Microsoft Teams, that he'll have been set up as a regulated user. Let's assume Kevin isn't a regulated user, but Jerry joins a call, makes a call, joins a meeting, someone calls him. So essentially in the background, there's this concept of meetings. Over and above, calendarized invites of meetings. It could be if I call someone, someone calls me. If I'm a regulated user, when I have an interaction, if I communicate via Teams, what happens in the background is there's a policy check, and the policy check looks up to see if Jerry's regulated or not. And if I'm regulated, what it'll then do is it'll auto-invite the recording bot. And if you hold that thought for a second, I'll go back to it in a sec. The Teams platform will also play or display an announcement depending on how you join. So if you join on a phone, if it's voice only, it'll be an audio announcement. If you join on a device with a client, so if that's a PC, laptop, tablet, you'll see an announcement. So this recording solution also works against a variety of Teams-enabled devices. It works against PCs, laptops, tablets, any Teams-enabled phone or device in, for example, meeting rooms or on a contact center floor, and mobile. So any regulated user that's set up to be recorded, when they join, the recording bot's auto-invited. So that's where we step in. The recording bot is our software, and its job is to essentially record everything that regulated user does for compliance reasons. So it'll record anything that I say, anything that I hear, anything that I share if I'm sharing screen or have video on, and anything I see if I'm consuming screen share or video. So its job is to sit in the background when I join meetings or join calls, and it will continue to record. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move from the theoretical, and I'll show you a demo of that in action. So I'm going to change now from slides to sharing my screen. So you give me just a sec. Okay, so you should be able to see Teams. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call. I've got a user set up. So this is user setup. It's associated with this mobile phone. And on that user is defined as a user who's under recording policy. So I'm going to give him a call, and then we'll see the recording solution in action, and we'll be able to look at it within the application. So just going to make a call. I've answered the call. I'll get a close-up with video. And hang up. Okay, so we made a short call there. We're now going to go and look at what's happened within the VFC platform. So I'm still within Teams. I'm logged in here to the VFC application. I'm going to go full screen so that you can see the application in its entirety. So what we have here is along the top, we've got the different menu options of different applications and features and functions. The main area here are the calls that have been recorded that I have the authority to view. So there's lots of ways to lock down who can and can't see calls, and different modalities and the different records that we maintain. So we're going to go back to that in a second. So that's basically a quick view of the video call and the voice call we just captured. A little bit more on the navigation. I've got lots of different options here to search for different calls, as if I'm a compliance or someone who's monitoring calls. So different time, user-based. We'll look at cases and labels in a second. Lots of metadata that we get from the Teams platform. So all the different piece of metadata that we would get from Teams. We also do additional voice quality analytics, so we can pick out calls that have potentially got lots of silence, or if there's infrastructure problems, if there's calls with lots of garbled noise or packet loss. So different ways to find calls. We also find calls that the platform itself can manage lots of different communication integrations. So in addition to Teams, all the different turret vendors, if it's a financial services organization, but also other UC platforms. And with Geomant, we can help with migrations from Link and Skype, Cisco, Symphony, lots of different mobile integrations as well, all covered with the same platform. And finally, in terms of search, we can also search for instant messages captured from Teams or elsewhere, and also search within text, so that you could maybe find calls where Kevin and Jerry have said particular non-compliant phrases, for example, or other ways to help the compliance officer find if there's a particular issue. So lots and lots of different ways to search. Along the top, we've got quality management functions, compliance workflows for things like authorization requests for legal hold, or replay approval, or access to conversations, and lots of dashboards and different features and functions for configuration and administration. So let's start looking at the calls. I placed a call to the mobile phone and changed to video. I'll give you a quick view of different calls I've prepped earlier. So in this one here, screen share, I'll just show you quickly and then close it down. So we've been able to record screen share, plus the metadata around it. We've got voice calls. I'd mentioned before labels and cases. So labels here, I've been able to manually mark this call as a compliance officer persona as being non-compliant or requiring review. I could also mark calls or video calls that they're part of a case if it's more of a formal investigation. And we've also got rules engines to do things to try and proactively find patterns in calls. If there's particular calls that participants that shouldn't be speaking with each other, or if there's particular phrases or words that are non-compliant, we can automatically label them or automatically add them to a case. And last, I'll just quickly show the video call we captured. So it's the quick call we captured. And I'm now going to finish up the demo. If anyone would like a more involved demo, please get in touch, we can help. I'm now going to move back to slides. So just a second, so we transition. Okay, so just in terms of recap, we started off quite high level with the functional flow of how our recording solution works against the Teams platform. We looked at that in action with the live demo, I'm now going to take a slightly different path and show you more of a technical or architectural view of that. So it's quite similar. What we're going to do is we'll look at 3 different slides. The high level message to get across is picking up on what Kevin said. Together we can offer lots of different options depending on where the organization is on its cloud journey or its preference for Azure or others, or if it has on-prem infrastructure. We can cover all of the different bases together. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the architecture in slightly more detail, but it's the same functional flow. So if we look at these slides, bottom left, we've got a call coming in or from the phone, or we've got a Teams user on a client making a call, joining a meeting, someone calling them. So the area here where it's Teams call meeting, Teams user, bottom of the screen. When the meeting starts or the call starts, what the Teams platform does is it invites the VFC Teams recording bots, and we start to record the interaction. Within this model here, what you'll see is everything's deployed within the Azure stack, within the Azure services. So if a customer has a preference for everything being hosted within Azure and everything being Microsoft technologies, we can cover all of the recording infrastructure from the recording servers to the storage to the application server. So that's the portal that I logged into showing the compliance officer. Everything can run within Azure, and also we can link out to Azure AD so that we can synchronize all of the users and recording policies without any duplicate keying or duplicate administration. And we can also ensure that the compliance officer authenticates against the Azure AD authentication profiles. So in this first diagram here, everything's running within hosted within Azure. The next diagram, it's a similar flow, but there's a slight difference. So the slight difference here is we often meet customers who aren't ready or don't have a preference to go on that Azure-centric journey, and they already have an investment in either an on-premise archive or recording infrastructure, or they have a preference for a different cloud platform. So in those instances, again, the flow starts off similar. So you've got the call on the left-hand side, the PSTN call coming in, or indeed the Teams user joining a call or a meeting. So someone starting a meeting, making a call, receiving a call. What happens is the Teams platform again invites the recording bot. There's one dependency within the architecture, regardless of how it's deployed. The Teams recording bot must run on a VM within Azure. The rest of the recording infrastructure can be elsewhere, but this is the one thing that has to be within Azure for the new compliance, policy-based compliance recording APIs. So that's the recording bots within Azure. And in this instance, the right-hand side of the diagram, the recording infrastructure is where the customer wants it to be. So if it's not in Azure, it could be on-prem, it could be in a different hosting environment. But the flow is similar. And again, we'll integrate to AD for the user details, but the recording archive and recording storage and recording infrastructure sits outside of Azure. And last but not least, we've got one other option in terms of recording infrastructure. So we can also record via session border controllers. So that's been GA and live for a longer time than the compliance APIs. But if a customer has an investment in an SBC, we can also use the SBC to record the different Teams calls. Now I'm going to hand you back to Kevin to take you through some more details on deployment options.
Thanks, Jerry. That was great. Okay, let's move on to some of the considerations that organizations should consider when looking to deploy Teams recording. So as Jerry highlighted, every organization is different, and we talk to lots of different organizations, and we try to accommodate their particular requirements. So we put together a tailored solution, and some of the things that you need to consider are detailed on this screen. So firstly, staying on premise or moving to the cloud. So Jerry's already outlined what options are available. So the Teams API uses this bot that needs to live in Microsoft Azure, but the other components can be rolled out in the cloud, they can be on premise, or they can be on a hybrid basis. A pure cloud solution can be based on your own Microsoft Azure tenant, or it can be in the tenant of a hosting partner like Geomant. Now, if you do outsource, if you do take a software as a service solution like ours, that makes deployment much quicker and simpler, and it enables you to purchase the recording as a service. So let's also look at scalability. So only the most advanced solutions out there actually offer the flexibility to scale Microsoft Teams recording based on numbers of users and transactions that you're accommodating at any point in time. And that might be across different processors and physical and virtual servers. So we've all seen over the last few months how organizations have to rapidly change how they operate. So if you need to flex your operation to respond to changing needs, such as the increase of remote staff, then the solution must offer the freedom to scale the deployment up and down based on your requirements. Then you saw some of the oversight and business intelligence screens that Jerry showed. So a Teams recording solution will need to have some centralized administration. It needs to have real-time data across the whole of the recording system. So this can help reduce the effort and costs associated with maintenance and free up skilled IT personnel to focus on the more complex value-add activities. And then in the area of user provisioning. So managing users and keeping the system updated with adds, removes, and changes is well known as an area where traditional recording solutions can pose opportunities for failure and potential compliance gaps. So as Jerry highlighted, strong integration with Active Directory means that for secure authentication and access control, this can reduce the effort needed for change management and user provisioning. So we certainly work with organizations with multiple different requirements and multiple different structures. Um, but what we are seeing is an increasing number of organizations coming to us for a hosted service, a fully hosted service, where we provide Verint Teams recording on a software as a service basis. And that's why we launched this service that we're talking about today. So I've listed a number of the benefits associated with such a solution on this slide. They include the speed of provisioning, so you can get the system up and running much quicker than deploying it from scratch. The cost savings of not having to manage the underlying technical infrastructure. What this hosted service is, it includes both the Verint software subscription and our technical hosting service, and they're bundled together into a single per user per month charge. And we are able to offer that flexibility I spoke to in terms of user numbers as the business requirements change. So we're drawing to the end of today's webinar. There have been some questions come in. If you do have any follow-on questions or would like to discuss any aspect of what you've seen today, please do get in touch with us. And if you are considering implementing Teams recording, we'll be happy to arrange a one-to-one meeting where we can go through the demo, we can go into more detail about the Verint solution, and we can discuss how it would work to meet your particular requirements. So I'm going to close off now. I really thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar. Hope it's been informative, and hopefully we'll engage at some point soon. Thank you.